So again, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming down and joining us. Again, my name is David Sowers. I'm with the Washington State Department of Transportation. Again, we have our collection of partner agencies here. We want to give you a little bit of an update on traffic, and we also want to talk a little about tunneling progress today and how things are going. First of all, I want to thank all of you for helping us get the message out. We really appreciate the media reporting out and getting these messages out to the traveling public, because we're seeing a real benefit of that, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the press conference, but that's been great, and I really appreciate all of your help in doing that. I want to thank the partners that are here. So we have King County Metro, we have King County Water Taxi, Seattle DOT, and then of course WashDOT's team and Sound Transit. So I want to thank all of our partners that have joined in and helped make this work as well as it could, despite the situation. And I just want to also thank the public. You guys have obviously, everybody has listened to the message. You've gotten the message. You've taken alternate modes to get to work or teleworked. You've done things that have really helped alleviate the situation, and I really appreciate that. We see a lot of additional transit use in the last half a week, so that's been great, and I really want to applaud you and show my appreciation for that. So I'm going to turn this over in a second to Travis Phelps, who's going to talk about WashDOT traffic. But first, I kind of want to give a little bit of an update on the tunneling process. As we speak, again, this is a very dynamic process. So I'm going to throw some numbers around, and in an hour from now, they'll have changed as the machine continues to mine forward. But in short, we're about a third of a way through our journey to get from the safe haven out and underneath the Alaskan Way Viaduct, and that's again, we continue to see good progress by Seattle Tunnel partners. They continue to manage the machine. We have a command center that's working 24/7 at WashDOT as well as with our partner agencies, and so we're continuing to see good information coming off the machine, good data, the survey data that we're collecting. Also 24/7 continues to show very stable ground conditions. The viaduct is still very stable, and so that all the data that we're seeing looks great, and we appreciate that. And again, it's a very dynamic process. There's certainly maintenance that's going on. There's other things that are going on. So while we've been averaging about 6 rings per day the last few days, it's certainly no guarantee that we're going to continue to mine at that rate. So I don't want to try to offer any predictions about when we're going to open the viaduct back up. But again, things look good at the moment, so that's encouraging. Again, back to the command center, we do continue to work very closely with our partner agencies. We continue to have 3 times a day call-ins to go over traffic and try to take steps to alleviate pinch points as we see them develop in real time. We're always talking to Seattle Police to mobilize UPOs, and John will talk about that in a second. So there's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes, again, to try to alleviate the traffic issues. And I'm going to turn traffic over now to Travis, who's going to talk about it from a region standpoint. Travis.
Hey, good morning. The commutes, we've kind of seen the same patterns we've been seeing since Friday. We've seen the morning commute start a lot earlier. We've seen both the morning and afternoon commute last a lot longer. So those patterns still continue to ebb and flow. I'll talk about some good spots and some bad spots. We'll start with the good spots first. I-5 southbound out of Linwood and Everett, their commutes are pretty much starting when they normally have been, and we haven't seen the big push of major congestion that we'd feared. I know from looking at some of our preliminary numbers coming in, we have seen a bit of a volume drop on that section of I-5. Doesn't mean there isn't going to be tough commutes. We did have some lengthy congestion this morning, but it could have been a lot worse had drivers not done their part and really looked at transit, carpooling, vanpooling to kind of get around that. The real big pressure point is on the south end. We're talking northbound 167, northbound 405, northbound I-5. Those have been consistently thick throughout the last 3 days of the morning commute, and we expect that trend to continue as folks are really just trying to figure this out. Which northbound route is going to work the best for me? And with yesterday's crash on northbound I-5, which only blocked for about 20 minutes, we still saw significant congestion jumps in all 3 of those northbound corridors. Today, the congestion spread out a little bit, and we're receiving some notifications via social media that the viaduct traffic was actually also affecting portions of SR 18. So this again, even though the viaduct is shut down in Seattle, this is going to continue to have a regional impact. Flipping over to the afternoon commutes, we have been seeing congestion on I-5 start a lot earlier as well. The congestion yesterday started around 12:30 or so. Start that over. Congestion on southbound I-5 in the afternoon commute started around 12:30 or so and got progressively worse and really started peaking around 4 o'clock. And we've seen that kind of constant trend. Folks are leaving and getting out and about earlier, trying to get a jump on the evening rush. So those commutes are starting around 2 o'clock on average in the afternoon, and they can last a lot longer as well, pushing on into that 8 o'clock hour. So drivers just need to be very mindful about how and when they're traveling. We're getting our way through it. The commutes could have been a lot worse. I know that drivers are doing their parts. We've seen a lot of shifting traffic patterns, but we still do need help for them for the foreseeable future. So with that, that's kind of traffic on a regional perspective. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. John Laser from SDOT.
Thanks, Travis. I'm John Laser again, SDOT Director of Interagency Projects, and I would echo a lot of what Travis said. Our local system responds to a great degree to the regional system, so when we have congestion on I-5 in particular, that starts to affect the major east-west arterials that connect to I-5, Denny, Mercer, Spokane Street, and then eventually will trickle through the rest of our system. Overall, 4th Avenue northbound has been our most significant challenge, both in the morning, but also in the midday and through the evening peak. We did make some adjustments to the signal timing on that corridor on Monday morning. We moved a little quicker to the timing that the signal system itself would ultimately respond to. And we did see some benefit there, but we're still moving a much higher volume of vehicles through the corridor, and so we do still have those congested conditions, but slightly less delays than Friday. During the AM peak and the midday, many of our downtown corridors are performing as well or close to as well as they did before the closure, again with the exception of 4th Avenue. In the PM peak, almost all of our corridors are taking longer, so that early start to the PM peak, the congestion building on the freeway system, and then we're seeing downtown also start to get choked up. But we've been able to keep things moving reasonably well with much higher travel times, or higher travel times than before the closure. I would mention that we have seen much higher incidents and blocking incidents, accidents. Those numbers vary quite a bit day to day, but our weekday numbers for Friday, Monday, and Tuesday were more than double the number of incidents that we were seeing in the 2 weeks leading up to the closure. So our incident response teams, the state's incident response teams, and our Seattle Police Department partners have done a good job of getting out and clearing many of those incidents quite quickly because, as Travis alluded to, those incidents, once they cause a problem, in the peak, our system has a very difficult time recovering. So if you have an incident on a major corridor, it may not be till after the peak till it really fully clears. Wanted to mention a couple of statistics about bike ridership. These figures again are preliminary, and we have a lot of day-to-day variation. But we did see this week with the start of Bike to Work and Bike Everywhere Month, we saw ridership across the Fremont Bridge over 5,000 bike riders both Monday and Tuesday. That's the highest ridership we've seen all year on that corridor. It's about 25% above what we'd seen for the sort of the high mark for the week leading up to the closure. So that's really great. And on the Spokane Swing Bridge, the lower bridge, we're up over 2,000 daily riders, and that's the highest ridership we've seen since we opened that facility in 2013. It's about double what we'd seen on average during this year. As Travis mentioned, probably the biggest impact we're seeing is from people making adjustments to their travel, whether that's time of day or mode of travel. I'll mention anecdotally that a little after 3 o'clock yesterday, I saw just a ton of people waiting for the bus on 2nd Avenue. So clearly people are out, getting out of downtown about an hour earlier, whether it's by bus or driving. And that's going to be the main thing for us is for people to maintain those good habits. We really appreciate the hard work that the people are doing to make this work as well as possible during this period. With that, I'll turn it over to Paul Brodeur from Water Taxi. Thanks.
Thank you. Paul Brodeur, B-R-O-D-E-U-R, with the King County Marine Division and operators of the water taxi. So on the water taxi, we're seeing hundreds of new riders as people adjust their commutes and look for alternatives into town. The numbers on the West Seattle route are record-setting, tripling more than what we normally would see this time of year. On Monday alone, we carried 3,200 folks to and from West Seattle. Again, that's over triple. Last week we did 990 on the same days. Over the 5 days, including the weekend, we're over 13,500 riders on that route alone. Vashon is up 400 riders in total, and that's people taking advantage of the additional sailings that we've added at Vashon. We have 3,100 riders over the 3-day commute period out of Vashon and back to Vashon. Typical would be about 2,600. So we're thrilled that our service is making a difference during this tough time for people and as they find ways in and out of the city, and that that we're able to make a difference. And our service, being what it is on the water without the congestion, we do able to deliver that service reliably. 10 minutes between here and Seacrest Dock in West Seattle and 22 minutes to Vashon Island. We filled several evening commutes to capacity, which demonstrate the growing demand that folks have moving themselves back home in the evenings. Our 5:15 in the evening and our 5:45 have been the most popular sailings, and those typically are the most popular even in non-trying times such as the viaduct closure. But we're offering that we do have plenty of capacity if people can adjust a little bit before the peak and a little bit after. We've got plenty of capacity. We're running about 54% capacity on our West Seattle route in the morning and about 74% capacity in the evening. So there is capacity off those peak times. And folks, I noticed yesterday, were adjusting their schedules to meet that additional capacity so they could be sure to get the sailing they want. I'll offer some pro tips for the unseasoned water taxi riders, and this is based on firsthand information of being out both at Seacrest in the morning and here in the evening. There's still plenty of parking in West Seattle at Terminal 2, and we have a dedicated shuttle that brings you back and forth to Seacrest Park. Again, our busiest morning commute, 7:15, 7:45 out of West Seattle. Still capacity, we haven't overloaded those, but if you can spread that out earlier or later, that's appreciated. And again, the 5:15, 5:45 out of Seattle. We have overloaded those both on Monday and one sailing last night, the 5:45. So if you can spread that out, I think folks will get to where they want to go quicker. The upside is that if you are in an overloaded situation out of here in the evening, it's 30 minutes to the next boat, so it's not too terrible. Thanks. I'm going to turn it over to Victor Obeso from our King County Metro Division.
Good morning. I'm Victor Obeso, O-B-E-S-O. I'm Deputy General Manager for King County Metro Transit. And Metro has continued to keep travelers moving during this period of the viaduct closure and increased congestion on our local roadways. Our buses that typically use the viaduct are traveling through reroutes in the Soto neighborhood on 4th Avenue predominantly and the Soto busway. With continued support from the State Department of Transportation, we've added a number of standby buses, and we continue to appreciate the support of the Seattle DOT and the police department in keeping traffic moving on our local streets. As John was describing, we continue to have some challenges on 4th Avenue coming into the downtown area. A little bit further north on 4th Avenue in the afternoons, heading towards I-5 and Oliver Way, and 2nd Avenue in the afternoons. To be expected in areas that have congestion on typical weekdays, increasing through this period. We, with that state support and the standby buses that we've run in the first 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we ran 74 additional bus trips, carried 2,200 additional riders. We have very preliminary ridership data. Our bus system has ridership counters on about 1/3 of our buses, so it takes several days of data to come in to get a good trending information. But based on that preliminary information, our ridership on our standby buses and the higher equipment rate on our rapid ride lines, our rapid ride C line from West Seattle, the D line, Ballard and Uptown, and the E line from Shoreline and on the Aurora corridor into downtown Seattle are seeing, we estimate, roughly a 2 to 7% increase in ridership. So those lines carry 10,000, 15, and 16,000 riders respectively each weekday. So that's a significant indicator that people are choosing transit in greater numbers during this closure. As we have more data come in over the coming weeks, we expect to see that ridership trend throughout our trips that are coming into downtown Seattle on routes throughout the system, and we'll be able to give you better and more firm numbers in the coming weeks. We have tools available online, King County Get Ready page for riders who have not yet tried transit. Again, we encourage you to give it a try, to prepare in advance. Be patient as you use service during this period. We have had some difficulty maintaining schedules, but that's the purpose of our standbys, is to fill in trips in between those missed or delayed trips further down the corridor. So we encourage people to continue to use transit, and we very much appreciate their patience in doing so. We're thankful for the patience of our drivers of our system as well. We have 2,600 drivers that are carrying riders and additional travelers through this period, and their patience on the roadways is important to the ability of everybody else to have their mobility as well. So appreciate the work that you've done to get the word out, to ensure that people know that they have options, and that we are seeing many people modifying their commutes this week. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Bruce Gray of Sound Transit.
Morning. Good morning, it's Bruce Gray, GRUI, spokesperson for Sound Transit. The numbers are still early, but I think it's safe to say we're seeing more folks on our trains coming in and out of Seattle. Light rail is up about 10%, and Sounder is up about 15%. So people are getting the word to get on the train and forget about traffic. What we're also seeing, to echo what everybody else has said today, things are filling up a little earlier in the morning, especially our park and rides to the south between here and Tacoma and Lakewood. So the best option to get the Sounder in the south really is going to be to take a bus to the train, get dropped off, walk or bike. Those parking garages fill up very early in the morning. Same in the north, we're seeing good ridership coming from Everett and Mukilteo and Edmonds into Seattle, so folks are getting that word. We've got extra train cars on those north Sounder lines that are helping carry these extra people. We've got some extra train cars also on the light rail side. We're running more 3-car trains than we were in the weeks prior, and that's helping. Again, we are seeing some heavy loads on the trains, especially around the peaks. So it's especially important now to remember your good transit manners. Get on the train, spread to the ends in the center. Don't clog up the doorways. You've got plenty of time to get on and off. And when people are trying to get on those trains, maybe you can step out of the door, step off the train, let folks on, then you can get back on and get where you're going. So these are very early numbers, and generally our ridership is lighter on Fridays and Mondays. So things are really picking up now. We're getting into the heart of things, and we'll see how that continues. But so far things are going well, and we've got capacity to carry people, and we hope more folks are going to jump on the train and forget about it. Thanks.
So we'll open it up to questions. So direct your question to a particular person. Anybody want to start?
I have a question for Victor. So is there going to be no change at all then in the southbound back to West Seattle runs? I've heard lots and lots and lots of reader complaints about getting stuck behind trains at Lander, etc. And they wonder, why can't we just take the busway, for example?
We are maintaining our routings at this point, but evaluating it on a daily basis, and prepared to make adjustments in routing as needed in real time when needed. We did have a situation with the rail gates coming down unexpectedly without trains coming through a few days ago, and we immediately rerouted buses in that instance. So we're preparing for that. We do have staff stationed in the Seattle DOT Traffic Operations Center. So we're maintaining contact with those operating the streets and trying to choose the best path each day and really each hour of the day. but we have not changed our basic routings for service that we established at the beginning of the closure.
This may be a better question for Dave or John. This hasn't been Carmageddon so far. It seems like a plan has come together. Are there any lessons that you're able to apply from this and perhaps make traffic better once the viaduct does reopen?
SDOT absolutely will be reviewing the information that we've gathered. As you've heard, a lot of the data, the raw data that we're collecting today is still just that, it's raw data. In some cases, it'll take a couple of days or weeks of data before we have really reliable numbers. So we definitely plan a pretty extensive sort of after-action review of what we've experienced here. That's going to help us for the closure when the tunnel's finished. We still have a closure coming up when the tunnel's finished, just to get it open and connected, but also just for our ongoing daily operation. So we absolutely will be looking at both the numbers and the experience that we've gained to help inform our practice moving forward.
And does that give you hope that maybe there are things that can be done in the future?
I think that I would say that what we're learning is that most of the things that we thought would make a difference are making some difference around the edges. We're finding some things that we thought would make a difference that aren't making a great difference. So it's really a little bit of a mixed bag right now, and I think once we're done and we can gather all the data, it'll really help us identify if there are sort of jewels that we've discovered to move forward and implement on a longer term basis.
Any preliminary specifics on that? There's some things that have made a little bit of a difference, but not that much, or more of a difference?
No, I don't have anything specific jumps to mind, sorry.
John, what's the biggest surprise? Any surprises so far?
I think Monday for me was a pleasant surprise that it seemed to me, and I don't think the agencies would in any way take credit for Monday being better than Friday. I think that the biggest surprise for me is people's response, is that people, it appears, really did heed the warning and adjust their patterns. And so that's something we need to keep giving people the options and the tools to be able to make those choices moving forward.
On First Avenue, there was 40% more traffic on one of the days than normal. So knowing that, is there any changes you're going to make to maybe focus on some of those problem spots?
Again, I think it will be something that we look at in terms of the data that we're gathering. There are limits to what we can push through the system. That's what you see on I-5. It's what you see on 4th Avenue in the mornings. So there are limits to how much traffic we can push through a corridor. And when you take this many trips off a major corridor through downtown, you're going to have some corridors that are overloaded. So I don't think we'll jump to implement longer signal cycles through downtown or other measures throughout the day as a regular practice, but it does give us a real clear indication of what those actions, how those actions make a difference or don't make a difference when we have an incident or a special event or something else going on.
John, is there a concern at all about commuters becoming complacent and then traffic building during this closure?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that we continue to try and reinforce is that things can get worse much more easily than they can get better. The things that we can control in terms of the traffic system are likely to make minor differences sort of around the edges, and what people choose to do is what's really probably making the biggest difference right now. We need people to sustain that behavior through the closure.
Any other questions?
Is the timeline still about 2 weeks? Like, has that changed, or is it more? I know.
No, we continue to stay with that schedule. Sorry. Just one word answer it. We continue to stay with that 2 week schedule, yeah. I mean, we're encouraged by the progress that they're making, but it's still early to start speculating when they would actually finish mining and clear out underneath the viaduct.
Well, the tunnel is open, so go ahead.
Well, once they mine, then will they go through like that protocol they do on 99 with the earthquake thing? Is that something?
Well, so at the end of the mining, the structural engineers, like we do semi-annual closures and do their inspections, will do one last inspection. Again, as long as the numbers, the settlement, the numbers that we're seeing on the viaduct continue to remain stable, that'll be very, very quick. But they will do a final inspection at the very end, and with their blessing, then we'll open the viaduct back up to the public.
David, how long is the next viaduct closure going to be? I mean, when the tunnel's done, is that what closing
Yeah,
that
so
tunnel?
John alluded to that a little bit. We're still in the planning stages of that, but so what we're talking about is once the tunnel is constructed and it's ready for traffic, we have to close the viaduct and we have to shift the lanes that are accessing the viaduct over into the tunnel. That should take about 2 weeks to do right now. Some of that work is being handled through existing contracts, and some of that is still being planned out. So again, if I was to just throw a rough number at it, it'd be about a 2-week closure of the viaduct to get that. But again, we're going to try to do everything we can to make that as short as possible, because obviously we want to get folks into the tunnel.
Has there been any settlement detected so far during this mission?
There has not. It's that's been one of the really encouraging numbers that we've seen, is that the viaduct continues to remain stable, and really it's within the accuracy of the survey equipment. That's the kind of movement that we're seeing on the viaduct. So that's all great.
I know this might have been asked yesterday, but are there any additional measures being taken in light of STPs for the sinkhole that was found in the north end on Roosevelt?
So you're talking about Sound Transit's
Yeah.
sinkhole.
Yeah, I know it's different, but
So there's not any additional measures being taken. What we're doing and what Seattle Tunnel Partners is doing is continuing to monitor the volumes of material coming off of the machine and comparing that to the theoretical volume that's being excavated. As long as those balance and they continue to show a balance, there is no over excavation. That is really the most important thing that we're looking at, is the amount of material that is coming off of the conveyor belt versus what theoretically should be coming off.
so if that's done right, then like let's say 4 months from now, it's not like there's going to be some sort of crazy issue. I mean,
Yeah, and the other measure that the contractor takes is that after they've mined through that area, then they go back and they do grouting and secondary grouting as well. So there's other ways to calculate if there's been any kind of volume change in the ground. And again, those checks that we've done, some of those have happened yesterday, some of those happened on Monday. Those continue to show no over excavation. So we're very confident that we're not seeing any kind of over excavation.
Question for Paul. Can you reiterate what kind of a backup plan you have if there are trips that consistently, after a few days perhaps, go over capacity? I know the Spirit of Kingston is available part of the time, maybe?
So again, we've got plenty of capacity on the West Seattle boat with 7 sailings in the morning and 7 in the evening. The peak trips in the evening are the 5:15 and the 5:45 out of Seattle. I've seen the queue line out to Alaskan Way, and I've had to snake it back into our facility so to keep people safe and off the the right-of-way out there. But the boat arrives, very quickly, and that line dissipates very quickly. For those overloaded situations, the wait is 30 minutes. I think we left one person on the dock last night when we overloaded. He was unluckily the 279th passenger, and I had to explain that's a federal regulation. We can't put more than 278 folks on the boat per Coast Guard regulation. So we do all hand counting. All our counts are by hand, and they're very accurate. So when we do have to cut the line off, again, it's a 30-minute wait. So we're asking people, as I was circulating the queue last night, if you can arrive a little early for that 3:45, 4:15, lots of capacity. If you can hang out a little bit longer and arrive at 18:15, then that's 6:15, then plenty of capacity. So it's really just those 2 peak sailings in the evening out of Seattle. We've had one overload in the morning out of West Seattle, and the line was not quite to Salty's. It was pretty impressive. And again, the boat's back in a half an hour. People did make that adjustment today. We saw more dispersion over the 4 core sailings, I'll call them, the 6:15, the 6:45, the 7:15, and the 7:45. There was more dispersion this morning, so I think people are adjusting based on the capacity of the vessel and what their experience is. I'm seeing a lot of more bicycles and a lot more drop-in rides, if you will, kiss-in rides. That's happening more frequently over at Seacrest Park, which is keeping the parking situation well in hand. There's plenty of parking for folks that still want to access this stuff.
David, you said about a third of the way through this morning. What does that mean?
We're at about 144 feet right now. So the contractors finished 22 rings as of this morning, and they're building a ring right now. So that number keeps changing.
Sure. Thank you.
one question. I think this would probably go for Donnie and David. Now that we're quite a ways through, have there been any? What do we know, and what are we still waiting to understand in terms of the commute? I know that's kind of an open-ended question.
It is an open question. I think we're trying to stay. What I've encouraged with our city team is that we're in the middle of a relatively long race here, so we need to maintain our focus. We're going to continue monitoring stuff. We're continuing to, where we see opportunities to make an improvement, we're jumping on it and being very active on those. So we're just trying to maintain the pace through the duration of the closure. As I mentioned, no sort of silver bullets or real significant things that we're pursuing, but just continued vigilance on incident response and the minor adjustments, making sure that our traffic control setups, for example, after the events on Saturday and Sunday, making sure that our traffic control signs are still in the right place and in place, making sure that our police officers are being shifted around as needed to the highest priority locations. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing day to day.
So I saw, speaking of incident response, I saw a bunch of IRTs, WashDOT, and SDOT parked around the city in strategic spots. How is that response time working for you guys?
I don't have hard, complete information on the response times. Our average response times, we do track number of incidents and average response times. It's a highly variable number because if we have an injury or serious injury or fatality accident, then there's an investigation protocol, and those incidents will take a lot longer. We have had, I will take the opportunity maybe to say, we've had a number of bus vehicle accidents, just anecdotally during the closure, and I want to reinforce to the public for people to respect the law and yield to transit. We really need people to drive safely. Those incidents and accidents are the thing that causes the biggest harm.
So you feel like the response times of the IRT teams getting to the collision and getting it out of the way, you feel that it's going pretty well?
I feel like it's going really well. Our raw measure of that on the city streets is slightly longer than average right now, but again, I haven't delved into the details because an individual serious injury accident that takes a long time to clear can really throw those numbers on people.
Totally.
And then I can jump in just for general incident response for the highway system. We've been pretty vigilant about having incident response teams in our highway system for a number of years. Throughout this closure, we have up to a dozen patrolling different areas. We're able to shift our resources back and forth. I think the big success of this week has been clearing that crash of the northbound I-5 that happened at the 5:30 hour during yesterday's commute. And we were able to do that within 30 minutes after letting the incident response teams actually remove some folks from the vehicle. We were able to get that out of the way as quickly as possible. So that's what we trained in, and what we do day in and day out. I think in terms of your question about what's the commute going to look like, it's all going to depend on how plugged in drivers stay. SDOT, WashDOT, Metro, you name it, we're all talking every single day as the commute evolves, and it's up to us to start pushing information out. But if we're pushing information out and no one's reading it, that's tough. And so that's really what it comes down to. We're doing a lot to get a lot of driver information out as quickly as we can. The drivers have to wake up every single morning and go, how's my commute change? Because the patterns are not going to be what they are today, tomorrow. And that's really the bottom line. We'll keep talking and keep trying to make adjustments where we can, but we really do need drivers when it comes down to it.
So everybody's available just to do one-off questions. Why don't we just break up and just ask anybody, individually what you'd like to ask at this point?
Okay.
Well, thank you.
All right, well,
Thank you.